Hello, Internet. With the current global pandemic forcing a lot of people to remain in their homes, there's been an uptick, I've noticed, in a lot of people being a bit more reflective and contemplative. I myself am no stranger to the idea of self-reflection since I tend to spend a lot of my time in my own head, but I've been finding myself a lot more contemplative as of late. A big chunk of that has come from the fact that as of the week this video has gone up, it will have been 10 years since I've graduated high school. And since this is the time of year where a lot of teenagers are taking that first step into adulthood by leaving high school, I figured I would compile some of the big lessons that I've learned in the 10 years I've lived as an adult and as someone who didn't really handle the transition to adulthood particularly well. I can only speak from my own experience. I can't speak to every experience. My hope is that by sharing these lessons, I can hopefully help someone who is about to make that transition to adulthood not make the same mistakes that I did. With that out of the way, here are 10 lessons that I have learned since leaving high school. Number 1. Most media depicting high school and college life is full of lies. A lot of the media that I consumed growing up often depicted teenagers as hedonists who were overly obsessed with sex or social clout, and even when they did try to tackle really serious issues, it was often done in a very dismissive way, where they were more or less preaching to the viewer rather than engaging the viewer in a way that respected their emotions and their intelligence. However, in my time, both as a film critic, but also as an adult that has tried to unlearn a lot of the problematic ideas that these shows put into my head, I came to one important realization that I'm sharing with you now. Most of the time, the media that is depicting teenagers in this way aren't actually meant to be consumed by real teenagers. More often than not, they are made by and for people who are wanting to relive a more idealized version of teenage life that is relatively far removed from reality. It's basically glorified wish fulfillment for people who are no longer teenagers and just want to relive those days vicariously through characters. And there's nothing inherently wrong with wish fulfillment in fiction, as long as you're honest about it, whether you're a creator or a consumer. But these shows are fiction. You should not be using them as a basis of comparison for your own life. That's like trying to model your life after Batman. It doesn't really work. Just ask Phoenix Jones. Number 2, the idea of hitting milestones is also nothing but lies. Here's the honest truth. The idea of these milestones is perpetuated by people who were born in positions of privilege. People who got to go to the fancy schools on the rich side of town. People who got to take the expensive classes to hone their extracurricular hobby of choice. And people in general who were just shielded from the harsher realities of life and more often than not inherited their wealth. Not everybody is going to hit these milestones in the exact same way at the exact ages people say they will. So if you've graduated high school but still don't have your driver's license, have never had a romantic partner, and are going to be living with your parents while going to college, that's fine. Life is basically a 5K fun run, not a sprint. You go at your own pace, and there's no arbitrary checklist of things you have to hit in order to be considered a functional person. Number 3, you are not your parents. Now, there's kind of this idea of the sins of the father will be laid upon the children. It comes up in the Bible, even though the specific verse is in Exodus and has a very important context surrounding it, and it's often referenced in the works of William Shakespeare and before him, Euripides. As a result, for those of you who aren't familiar with the concept, it's the idea that any misdeeds committed by your parents, whether against you or others, are yours to inherit, along with any of their negative behaviors and traits or traditions. And conversely, there's the idea that you're supposed to immediately take after your parents, whether it's going into the same industry that they did, or mimicking their personality traits, or any other deeply held beliefs. However, you are under no obligation to carry on any traits or traditions that contradict your own personal beliefs. For example, just because your family has a history of alcoholism, that does not mean you're condemned to spend your entire life living inside of a bottle. Just because your father is a promiscuous womanizer who had several affairs and shows no culpability or remorse in any way, shape, or form, that does not mean you yourself are condemned to a life of nothing but one-night stands. And just because your parents or your grandparents have this undeserved sense of superiority as a result of deeply held but inherently racist beliefs, you are under no obligation to continue holding on to those racist beliefs. You are your own person. You are who you choose to be. Your parents' sins are not your sins to bear. Number 4, Living a bad life does not give you license to treat others badly. Let's face it, some people are dealt really bad hands from the day they're born, whether it's illness, abuse, or other misery caused by factors that are just beyond their control. That said, you do have control over your own actions and how you treat other people. So if you're someone who has suffered hardship and feel that others must suffer the way you have suffered, you are not okay. You clearly have a lot of unresolved trauma that needs to be addressed. On top of that, by holding on to that mentality, by feeling that others have to suffer the way you have suffered, you're merely perpetuating the cycle of misery that led to your poor treatment in the first place. The best way to get back to the people who have treated you poorly is to show that their bad behavior is not going to break you, that they are not going to turn you into a worse person. In a world where you can be anything, be kind. Number 5. Change is constant, so embrace it. As Bruce Lee once famously wrote in one of his notebooks, to change with change is the changeless state. Whether that change is a change you are making for yourself or a change that is thrust upon you, rather than resist it head on, roll with it and redirect the energy towards something positive. The world will open up for you in ways you could never possibly imagine if you allow yourself the opportunity to change your daily habits, to change your thoughts and opinions, or even your way of living as the need arises. Change is neither good nor evil. It is merely a part of life. Number 6. Friendships fade, or at the very least, they change. Some friendships that you forge while you're in high school, where you're literally forced to be in the same building with the same people for 6 hours a day, 5 days a week, maybe longer if you're doing a bunch of extracurricular stuff, may not necessarily thrive once you make the transition to adulthood. Hell, even the kind of friendships you make in college are on a completely different level. It's not always a massive falling out that can cause a friendship to dissolve. Sometimes it just happens slowly as you and your friends start making decisions and start making a life for yourself in this weird adult world. There's no guarantee that the people you start your journey with are going to be with you down the road. You and your friends are all on different paths that happen to intersect at a particular point. Number 7. Everyone you meet is a person living their own lives as best as they can. Dovetailing into my previous point here, all of your friends, and even casual acquaintances, and even just random people that happen to also be in your graduating class, they are all complex people with their own thoughts, feelings, hopes, dreams, and ambitions. Your friends may end up making decisions that, by circumstance, end up taking them away from your life. And it's not out of malice, at least usually it isn't, but they are just making the decision that they feel is the best for them and their own personal growth. This same idea applies to anybody that you're going to meet throughout your life. You have no idea what is going on in their head or what they've been dealing with in their life that is shaping the way that they are interacting with you during the brief window of time that you come across them. You shouldn't make any assumptions nor pass judgment on people based on those assumptions. As Gandalf said to Frodo in the Mines of Moria, "Do not deal death in the names of causes like justice, for even the wisest among us cannot know all things." Number 8. Only you can know what is best for your well-being. Given where you are mentally and emotionally when you're leaving high school or college, there's going to be a number of people out there, some with noble intentions, that are going to try to take advantage of you. They may try to sell you a product that you don't actually need, or they may try to recruit you into some sort of financial scheme, political movement, or even a religious organization, or they may straight up try to micromanage your life in a way that benefits them personally, as you see in a lot of toxic relationships. You're going to have people left and right telling you what you should do, what you shouldn't do. There are going to be people who will try to talk you out of ideas that will benefit you in the long run. Some people will straight up fight you, both literally and figuratively, because they somehow feel that a decision you're making for yourself affects them personally, when in reality it damn well doesn't. But at the end of the day, it is your life, your decision, and ultimately up to you. And as selfish as it may sound, you've got to look out for number 1, you. That doesn't mean you should completely disregard anything and everything people are telling you. You just need to have the awareness to take a step back and actually ask yourself, what is going to be the decision that will benefit me personally? What is going to be the best for my goals? What is going to be the best for my health? What is going to be the best decision for me? Number 9, you need to be compassionate with yourself. Now, a lot of artists and writers and media personalities like to talk about cringy things they did in high school, and while that may make for relatable content, it's not healthy to constantly dwell on embarrassment. It's easy to let feelings of shame and fear overwhelm you, especially when a lot of these embarrassing moments that people joke about cringing happen during a time where your emotions are still developing, whether people are aware of it or not. Think about what lessons you can learn from the experience, but don't be afraid to forgive yourself and cut yourself some slack. You're young, you're learning, you're trying to find your way in the world, and that's okay. Part of the learning process is failure, and that's a natural part of life. And last but not least, number 10. Life is long. Like, really, really long. Despite people living longer and longer and longer, our society puts a tremendous amount of pressure on the younger generation to fix the problems created by the older generation. When you're leaving high school and going to college, you basically are expected to have your life completely figured out before you've had any opportunity to actually live. The truth is, nobody is born knowing what they want to do with their lives. Do some people get a better idea earlier on than others? Sure. But even then, that's not always a guarantee. Something that someone aspired to do or wanted to do when they were younger may not be something they actually want to continue doing for the rest of their lives because, for example, maybe they discover a different passion or maybe what they thought they wanted wasn't what they thought it was. At the end of the day, life is neither long nor short. Life just is, and you can take as much time as you need to figure things out. It's okay to take your time. So, those are lessons that I have learned in the 10 years since I have left high school. And let me make it clear, I am by no means an expert on really anything. I only know enough to know that there is so much that I don't really know. But that's kind of how life is. It's a process of continual growth and self-discovery. And you can either become stagnant and resist it, or you can embrace it and thrive. Thank you for watching, and don't forget to be awesome.